What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker, and welcome to another playthrough of Korea 625 War. This will be called Operation Killer. Um, so over the past month and a half or so, I've been working with the game's designer, Imperious Leader. Him, me, and my buddy Airsoft Commando have been kind of going back and forth, uh, ironing out some rules, thinking of ideas to add to the game and stuff like that. And so this is going to be a this is going to be a play test of the latest options that we came up with. So first over to the board, as you can see, there is a vast difference in the starting in the initial setup than in previous games. North Korea is steadily way more power. North Korea is more powerful. The South, a little bit more powerful and farther forward up in their starting positions, which is historically accurate. And that's the other thing too. Imperious Leader came up with this new initial setup. This is more of a historical setup to what each side sort of had at the beginning of the war in June, early July of 1950. So the Chinese are starting out a lot bigger. The North Koreans are starting out a lot bigger. South Korea is at least a little bit more big, is a little bigger, but more consolidated here on the border than having just random units out in the backcountry. Um, for the UN, I mean, the UN Navy's here, but there are no UN ground troops yet. UN ground troops didn't reach the war till about August 1950. Um, these are some of the early U.S. units that shipped over from Japan right away at the beginning of right in the beginning of June, July 1950, as well as the Japanese occupation forces, the U.S. Air Forces in Japan, and then some UN Air Forces that were shipped to Japan as well at the outbreak of the conflict. So, let's head over to the rule book. Now, this game, once again, Imperious Leader has two versions of this game. There's a base game and an advanced game, and in this one we are going to be playing the advanced game, but I am going to go over a few things from the basic rules too, because those are pertinent to it. So, the base game is reverting back to 12 turns. 12 turns that represent, and then each turn represents a 3-month period. The advanced game is going to be 19 turns. He's going one more turn up from the 18 that Airsoft Commando and I had initially done. And the overall objective of the game is to have the most net Korean territory. So, which side controls the most Korean IPC by the end of the July 1953 turn. Your standard order of play, it'll go North Korea, South Korea, China, the UN, the US, and then in the advanced rules, there is a way for the Soviet Union to come into the game. And if the Soviet Union comes into the game, they will take their turn along. Like North Korea will control the Soviet Union. There is technically not a separate Soviet player, but the Soviets will get a small income. And I did already put their starting units into their positions here on the in the one USSR territory on the map. And that is another thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, Imperious Leader did update the map, so it's a lot more crisp. You can actually see the territory names up here. If many of you remember from my other videos, these territory names were originally washed out because it was white. It was basically white against white, so it was really hard to read. That's turn sequence. Pretty much the same as most Axis and Allies games, just that the collect income will now come at the beginning of the turn and not the end of the turn. Other things that go on throughout the turn sequence, there is going to be a weather rule that during the month during the game, whenever you are involved, once the calendar goes into the months that cover January, February, and March, you'll roll a die. You'll roll a d6, and then on a 3 to 6, all land movement in the non-combat is reduced by one movement. And then in the combat phase, there's some new rules for air combat. Basically, if you want to look at it this way, there's air superiority, and then there's a tactical ground mission or tactical air mission. So there's if you're trying to do air superiority, will fight together at the same time as the ground, but it's mainly just going to be a fight for the skies. So there's air superiority, close air support, which again is your fighters that'll fight in the ground battle and not the air battle. Defensive fighters, fighters can't. You can scramble your aircraft from a nearby territory or in an adjacent territory. So, you know, let's say the Allies are or the UN forces are attacking Osan. The North Koreans have air units stationed in Seoul. They can deploy those. They can scramble those fighters in Seoul over to Osan to stop to join in the battle, whether it's an air superiority fight or helping on the hold on. Let me double check here. During combat, the defender may elect to bring any adjacent fighters into the battle by declaring prior to the start of combat. Planes can assist only in the second round of combat. Bombers and choppers may not assist in defensive air. So strategic bombers and choppers, even though choppers are not... the communists don't get choppers, but the U.S. does. And then you have your strategic bombing raids. Let's see here. Strategic bombing raids pretty much kind of go the strategic bombing rules are the same exact. You go to bomb. If the enemy has aircraft, those aircraft will scramble. Oh no, he does it a little differently. So factories don't get their inherent AAA in this game. So factories have to be defended by AAA guns. So how the strategic bombing will work in this game: first the AAA fires, then the escort battle if there is any escort battles, then the bombing run. And the AAA does get to shoot at every aircraft that flies into the territory. It's not like Axis and Allies Global where you just roll 3 dice and you hope for the best. This one, every aircraft can be a target. Then coming down, placing the UN, US reinforcements. So that one's going to be like how Airsoft Commando and I had set it up, where for the US and the UN, when you make your purchase, they have to sit on this card for 1 turn, and then on the place units, so they'll buy turn 1, and then on the place units on the place units phase on turn 2, then those units will deploy in their designated areas. And then once South Korea loses Seoul, tanks, aircraft, and aircraft can only tanks, aircraft, mech, stuff like that can have to wait a turn to come to Korea as well. Okay, so the base game is played with D6s, and you have your list of units here. Infantry. The reason why Chinese infantry is separate is because Chinese infantry, they cost less, but they also have they have different values compared to the other infantry. Your mech, your artillery, tanks, tank destroyers. AAA, your fighters, your jets, choppers, bombers, battleships, cruisers, carriers, destroyers, transports, supply trucks. Just look at that. That probably should come up here with all the rest of the ground troops that hang out down here. Supply tokens, factories. No one can buy factories. Um, special, and then sort of like the special unit attributes. Infantry get a +1 when matched with an armor or an air unit. Mech infantry can carry 1 infantry or 2 supplies. It cannot. It can't do like in the version that me and Airsoft Commando came up with, where it was mech infantry could also carry 1 infantry and 1 supply token if it wanted to. Um, there's still the sniping rule, where artillery and tanks. So say you have an artillery and a tank here, and you want to do a sniping mission against North Korean forces in Osan, you can do that. All sniping is at 2 or less, and any enemy units that you miss get to shoot back at 2 as well. Artillery for combat. Artillery for combat, from how I read this rule, it's still the same. So artillery actually going into an attack. Artillery will shoot first, then the defending artillery will roll, and then the rest of combat plays out from there. Tank destroyers can be built by everybody. Tank destroyers can snipe, but they can only snipe at 1. If they get hits, the defender has to remove artillery, mech, or armor first instead of infantry. So that's something big for tank destroyers. Your anti-aircraft guns, like I said, they get to shoot at every aircraft that flies in or over a territory. And there's varying dice rolls depending whether or not you're playing the base game with D6s or you're playing the advanced game with D12. Prop jets dogfight at 2, jet fighters dogfight at 3. One thing, when the game reaches October 1950, North Korea and China can build jet fighters, and then the UN forces can start building jet fighters in January 1951. Personally, I don't know about that, just because I know that the first major jet-on-jet combat, from my research, happened in November 1950, so I don't know how much. Yeah. Choppers. So the communists can't build choppers. They can carry 1 infantry or 2 supplies, just like the mech. Bombers. Bombers do get a dogfight roll at 1. They can carry 2 infantry or 4 supply, or 1 infantry and 2 supply tokens when acting as a transport. So in the base game, there is no air transport pieces. But then basically to act as a transport, when you want to move stuff as a transporter, you have to have units in the units have to start in the same territory as the bomber itself. If the bomber flies over a territory with AAA and the bomber is hit, the cargo is also killed as well. Naval units, only the U.S. and the UN can build naval units. Battleships, cruisers, and carriers take 2 hits to kill. And then with aircraft carriers, the damaged aircraft carrier rule applies in this game too, where if an aircraft carrier is damaged, aircraft cannot land on it, nor if there are aircraft on them, those aircraft are stuck there until they are repaired. And you can repair those units. I don't think it's... Oh, you have to... So in order to repair the ship, you have to roll a d6, and then whatever the result is, that's what you pay to fix the ship. So it's something like, I guess to determine what the damage sort of is. Sea transports can carry 2 infantry or 4 supply, or 1 infantry, 1 other unit, and 1 other unit. Or they can carry 1 land unit and 2 supply tokens. Then you have supply trucks, which can carry 2 infantry or 3 supply tokens. Supply trucks only move on the non-combat, and they have no combat value, and they can be captured if they are in a territory that is attacked by the enemy. Supply tokens. Now, so for supply tokens, how I understand how he wants it, I did edit it a little bit because the original how he had it, um, basically how combat's going to go with supply tokens now. You need a supply token for every round of combat you want to fight. So, so like these units have four. They have so like for North Korea, they have 4 supply here and 4 supply here. What they could do if they wanted to, they could take all these units and attack here. They would get, in theory, because not only can you use the supply tokens from the territory you're attacking from, you can use supply tokens from nearby territories. So, say these North Koreans attack, they technically would get 8 rounds. They'd have enough supply to fuel 8 rounds of combat. Whereas down here, the South Koreans have 2 here and 2 here, so these South Korean forces could only fight up to 4 rounds of combat before they would be forced to retreat or get wiped out. And then I'll explain that a little bit down here in the other rules with the defender retreats. Industrial complexes, you can't build new ones. They can only produce 10 units, and then any captured factories can only produce 5 units a turn. Supply tokens do not count towards the unit output for factories. Supply line rules works the same way. If you surround an enemy, basically they start losing 1 defense. They start getting a -1 to their defense every turn until they're wiped out. On the first turn and then break out of isolation. On the first turn that they're surrounded, they get 1 chance to attack at their full value before the -1 values begin to add on to them. Amphibious assaults, just like with mine and Airsoft Commando's rules, you cannot carry out any amphibious assaults on the last turn unless it is being supported by a ground force attack, and that's so that way it kind of keeps the allies from launching the Hail Mary at the end of the turn to basically swing the game right back into their favor by taking all these coastal territories. That's kind of the reasoning behind that. And then like I said, defender retreats. So, at any point during combat, you as the defender, you can elect to retreat your forces, or if you run out of supply tokens, then you have to retreat. Basically, once you elect to retreat, your units will pull back. I believe when you're playing the base game, I believe the enemy gets one more chance to I think the enemy gets one more chance to roll against you when you retreat in the base game, or you just retreat all wholeheartedly. When you play the advanced rules, there is another thing that comes with the defender retreat, so we'll cover that when we get down there. China, the rules for China are the same. They start with 10 IPC. Then once they join the war, they go to 25. This says 3, but there's only 2 ways that China can come into the war. 1, if the Allies cross the 38th parallel, and 2, the North Koreans hold Seoul for 3 consecutive turns, and then once they hold it for 3 consecutive turns, you start to roll a d6, and you start rolling a d6. For the first time that you roll, you're looking for a 6, and the second time you roll, it's a 5 or 6, so you get a +1 modifier for each turn that the Chinese don't come into the war. However, the Allies do have a chance to stop sort of the 3 consecutive turn clock by recapturing Seoul. If they can recapture Seoul, they can stop the rolls for Chinese entrance into the war. The hidden infantry, it went from 15 to 18, And then Chinese infantry, like I had noted up on the base game unit chart, they only cost 2 IPC. All right. And then as far as the hidden infantry, they're hidden all up in the north here. And then if any allied units are nearby them, they can attack. Or once China enters the war, they will be popped up. Okay, going down to the advanced rules. Uh, advanced rules is played with D12s. This is a typo. It's 19 turns, so that way each turn is effectively each turn is a 2-month window. Excuse me. It kind of messes up a little bit here, but that's fine. So 19 turns on the advanced. In the advanced games, we are playing with. There is the bridge rule, and the bridge rule is. Oh, we'll have to add a bridge here, especially if the Soviets might come in. Oops. So basically, once again, the bridges allow for the Chinese forces to cross the Yalu. These bridges can be strategically bombed to block Chinese movement into Korea. However, bombing the bridges will not bring the Soviet Union into the fight. So that's good. And then for bombing the bridges, it works the same way as strategic bombing against factories. The only difference is basically once you bomb the bridge and then it's repaired, you have to wait China has to wait another turn before the bridge can be crossed. So like if you look at this example, the US bombs one of the Chinese bridges on turn 7, and then on turn 8 China repairs it, and then as long as the Allies don't bomb that bridge again, on turn 9 the bridge is in use. So basically like it takes one full turn to repair said bridge. Okay, so POWs and salvage operations. This is tied to the defender retreats. Basically, when the defender retreats, the attacker will get to roll a d6. For enemy infantry, on a roll of 1 or 2, the retreating infantry unit is captured by the attacker, and then on a 4 or 6, the defending unit is allowed to retreat. Though there is not a 3 option. So I'm going to assume that if you roll a 3, the unit is destroyed. I think I'll just play it that way. And then for infantry, you can exchange infantry pieces for prisoners. So in this example, the North Koreans have 5 U.S. prisoners, while the U.S. has 3 infantry prisoners, and you can do an exchange rate of 3-3, and then those infantry get added into your build for that turn. And then salvage operations, this is basically your ability to capture your enemy's non-infantry units. So on a roll of 1 or 2, you can capture tanks, mechs, supply trucks, tank destroyers. Air units are excluded from this, same with naval units, even though there really is no naval combat in this game. On a roll of 1 or 2, the unit is captured. I assume on a 3 it's destroyed, and then on a 4 to 6 the unit retreats. Coming down here, MiG Alley rules. So this is an expansion to the dogfighting rules to be a little bit more historically accurate, and also because in the expanded rules is where we add a couple more. We add one more aircraft to the game. We do add fighter bombers or tactical bombers. Those are only used for the advanced game, and so these are your results for fighter combat for your counter air missions during the advanced game. So units added to the advanced game. So in the advanced game, China and North Korea, their infantry are a little different. Well, China's still the only difference. No, they both are a little different compared to their allied infantry. Mech units are the same. The U.S. can by Marines and paratroopers to represent the 1st Marine Division that was deployed during Korea and the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team that was deployed in Korea. Um, I'll go over their attributes in a little bit. The communists can get Katyusha rocket launchers. They can fire. They get all the same rules as artillery. Added into the game are different variants of tanks. You have your light, your medium, and heavy tanks. This is sort of to represent the slow progression of tanks throughout the war. So, like, for the Allies at the beginning of the war, they only had the M24 light Chaffee tank. And then a couple months into the war, then Sherman, the Sherman tank and the Pershing tank began to arrive on the scene. And then pretty much by uh, early mid-war, then like the U.S. started getting the M46 Patton tanks. Then, like I said, tactical bombers are added to the game. In the advanced game, North Korea does not get to buy strategic bombers. Only in the base game are they allowed to buy strategic bombers. The U.S. and the UN may use air transports. They can have air transports in this game, which they take on the transport capabilities of the strategic bomber from the base game of transporting infantry and transporting supply. For Marines and Airborne, they will get a +1 on the first round of combat if they are carrying out a combat mission to their specification. So if the Marines are making, say, an amphibious landing here at Hungnam and they're defending units, the Marines will get a +1 on the first round of combat just for being able to do the amphibious assault. If they happen to have an artillery with them, that'll give them another +1. So they'll get +2 on the first round of combat. And then on the second round of combat, it just reverts back to the +1 of being, or no, a tank. If they're paired with a tank or a fighter, they'll get the +1. So for the first round, they'll get a +2 modifier. And then for the rest of combat, they'll get a +1 modifier for the attached units. Airborne works the same way. And airborne infantry gets the +1 for just conducting an airborne raid for the first turn. However, if, say, like a tank blitzed up here to help them at Wonsan, they would also get the +1 for the tank that is joining the battle as well. And then further on, things change. So coming down to the light, heavy, and medium tanks, this just lays out what turn those tanks will come into the game and when you can buy them. For medium tank, China and North Korea can start building their medium tanks on turn 1 and then heavy tanks on turn 4. The U.S. and the UN can start building medium tanks turn 3 and then heavy tanks starting turn 7. This is just the air transport. Like I said, it basically takes over. One thing, and then you need the air transports to conduct the airborne attacks. 2 infantry. You can take 2 airborne infantry, assign them to the transport to fly them into combat up there, or to fly them into their airborne contact. All right, atomic warfare. So atom bombs are part of the advanced game. I've gone over them before. Basically, when you drop an atom bomb, there are 2 ways you can do it. You can either use the atom bomb to attack the IPC value of a territory, or you can use it to attack land units. The only problem is that the use of atomic weaponry triggers Chinese intervention and Soviet intervention, which I have some comments about that, especially because like the entry of Soviet forces. So if either Chinese intervention occurs or the U.S. player opts for atomic weaponry, a new intervention from the Soviet Union occurs, which deploys these forces, and then China becomes like a playable character controlled by the North Koreans. In my mind, the way I see it, the Soviets should only come in if the U.S. opts for atomic weapons, but that's just me. And then if the Soviets do come in, they will also get a chance to have atomic weapons as well. That is one thing. So basically, every turn after January 1951, at the beginning of every U.S. turn, they'll roll a D12, and on a 8 or higher, they get to purchase one atomic bomb for 8 IPC, and then they can stockpile it. And then that's the same for the Soviets. After they join the war, every turn after they join the war, they roll a d12 on an 8 or higher. They may purchase an atomic weapon. However, they are only limited to 5 total weapons because that was roughly what, according to research, that in 1950 or 1951, the Russians had only built about 5 weapons, whereas the U.S. we had hundreds, and the U.S. cap is, I believe I believe at one point there was a cap on U.S. weapons, but it doesn't look like it. And then, in order to deploy an atomic weapon, you need a strategic bomber piece to carry out that. And then finally, in the advanced rules, on the October 1950 turn, the Soviet 64th Fighter Corps uh, is given to the North Koreans. However, Imperious Leader changed it from being 3 jet fighters to just 3 standard fighters. So that is a little bit different. All right, so that's basically going over all the updated rules. We're like I think I said it. It's boy. This playtest is going to be called Operation Killer. I am only going to be showing the U.S. portion or the Allied portion of this game. I think I'll think about it a little bit on whether or not I want to play both, do videos for both sides, or if I just want to do videos for one side. I'll think about that. But so that is the introduction to Operation Killer, and just keep an eye out, guys, for our first video. So until then, guys, as always, take care.